I'm Chris Farrell, and this is On Watch. Welcome to this edition of On Watch. I'm Chris Farrell, Director of Investigations and Research for Judicial Watch. Joining me today is Patricia Kramer. She is a customs officer and president of the Customs Employee Union in Arizona, representing all the customs officers who are serving very bravely and very steadfastly along our southern border. Welcome, Patricia.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you for having me again.
Great to be back with you. We really appreciate your time, and we really appreciate the insights that you bring to our audience, because you get to speak directly to Judicial Watch supporters around the country. And I tell you, two things they're always interested in, of course: border security. That's kind of a big, broad topic that covers a lot of things, but securing our border. And then secondly, of course, this pandemic crisis that we're involved in now for months and months, and what the impact is on that, not just for our national sort of health, security, and safety, but for the officers who are out there doing the job of securing the border and doing those inspections and interviewing people trying to come into the country and examining cargo and all those functions, all those things. So Patricia, if I could, I'm going to ask you, let the American public know what your officers are facing from both the security standpoint on the border and from the health issue with respect to the COVID pandemic.
Absolutely, Chris. Well, once we thought that our job couldn't be harder, the pandemic hits us. And on top of having to do all those duties that you just described, now there's that concern about, getting infected with the COVID. For a long time, at least 3 months coming into the COVID, Arizona, as far as the officers, had not been affected. But, one thing that I had spoken to Judicial Watch months ago is that Mexico was boiling with the COVID, and they were lying about their numbers, like they lie about a lot of things. And, I was afraid that, it was going to hit the officers pretty bad. And it did. When Arizona got second wave of the COVID, we had a lot of infected officers. And unfortunately, we even had one officer pass away from COVID about a month ago. So, it's hit us pretty hard, and it's been very stressful, but, the officers show up every day still. And as far as drug seizures, our numbers have not gone down. They're still out there, doing the best job that they can, regardless of the circumstances.
Patricia,
but it's been pretty stressful.
Patricia, I think that there's probably a lot of Americans who think that the border's been shut down, that, we've restricted travel from around the world, from Europe, from Asia. The president has issued a lot of orders trying to control and contain our borders. And so it's my sincere belief that an awful lot of people have an idea that, well, maybe commercial traffic, only, critical, necessary supplies and the commercial exchange of goods are crossing the border, but that everything else has been reduced to near minimum. So what you're telling me is that is not the case.
No, Chris, not at all. They did get strict on the visitors, the people coming in with a visitor's visa to vacation or to shop. But with U.S. citizens and U.S. residents, it didn't stop. The agency put out that it's only essential travel, but at the end of the day, U.S. citizens and residents were coming in and out every day, for non-essential reasons. And I do believe that this is what caused a lot of the surge in Arizona, because, we're talking about, 3-4 hour wait times. The traveling public, it didn't impact them with the COVID. They kept at it, coming in, or going to Mexico for food, to visit family, for recreation. And, there was nothing that we could do about it. And so, I think that this was the reason why a lot of officers started getting sick. Because like I told you, Mexico hasn't been honest about, the numbers that have, the numbers in Mexico as far as the COVID cases. They have not been honest. And fortunately, though, just this past week, the administration came down with stricter guidelines for the essential travel. So it just happened this week. So it seems that they're getting stricter finally. I think that this is something that should have been done a while ago. But I mean, I guess it's better late than never. And hopefully they'll get the idea now, that, they have to rethink their travel. I think that people were hoping that this was going to go away in a few months, and it isn't. Sometimes I think that this is going to be our way of life now.
So please describe sort of the level or degree of interaction that a customs officer is having with somebody. Let's say it's a pedestrian gate, a pedestrian crossing point. They're coming across a bridge or through a gateway, and your officers engage with or contact foreign nationals to do an inspection, to review who these people are. Describe exactly the level of interaction and contact that they're having day in, day out.
Oh, well, I mean, that hasn't changed the level of our interaction because, we still have a job to do. So it could be from, just a few feet away to, I mean, super up close. If, the person might, have something on their body, or we see, a bulge in, in their clothes, like we have to get in there and get really close to the person and make sure that they're not bringing something into our country that can harm, that could potentially harm us, and harm our citizens. So, I mean, our degree of exposure has not changed at all, and it's scary because, you realize that out of all the DHS employees, Chris, customs officers are the most exposed. We're not taking temperatures for people coming in, and like I said, I mean, Mexico is, I mean, we can't count on them for anything, Chris. We can't. I'm Mexican American. My parents are from Mexico. I lived in Mexico. It's not, I don't have anything against them. I'm just telling you the reality that we can't trust them. And the cartel, I mean, the COVID has been bad. I mean, I'm sure it's been bad for business for the cartel, but they're not going to stop. They're not going to stop from doing their business, COVID or no COVID. They don't care. So we still have to, do everything that we can. If that means exposing ourselves, then that's what it is. I mean, we're guarding our nation's borders.
Is there a reason why there's no temperature screenings?
No, Chris, there's really not any reason. We don't understand it. We wish there was.
Now, excuse me for busting in, but I would think that that would be a real fast, easy, as the minute they're approaching, they get one of those touchless screening wands or handheld devices. And if they've got a temperature, you just turn them right back away and don't even get involved in processing.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, it's something pretty easy, Chris, that can be done. I mean, you have other countries that, aren't as powerful as we are taking temperatures. So why isn't the U.S. taking temperatures? I mean, that's a great question. That's a question that we've had, for, the DHS secretary to know, why aren't we, screening these people better? Another thing, Chris, that I had been very vocal about in the beginning is that under a national emergency, we can stop U.S. citizens and U.S. residents from leaving the country. So just as, we can't stop them from coming into the U.S., but we can stop them going out. And I think that going outbound, to ask them, what's the purpose of your trip? And if it's not essential, to turn them back around, and minimize the traffic going outbound as well as inbound.
My guess is also that when you've been on a particular crossing for a port of entry for a number of years, I mean, you sort of know who the frequent flyers are. And
yes.
I mean, frequent flyers is my shorthand expression for, those persons who routinely make either
Yes.
daily or 3, 4 times a week, in and out, in and out. You know who's doing that. You just see the same faces, same
Faces.
vehicles. And sometimes it's to go see grandma, and sometimes it's to go do business, but you kind of get a feel, and you would know, hey, look, is this legit? Is this real essential travel, or is it
Right.
just goofing off? What are you doing with your travel?
Right, and you're exactly right, Chris. Every port of entry, every officer, we know our traffic. And you're right, we know the faces that are coming to work every morning. We know their story already, because it's the same. We can tell you where the person works without them having to tell us every day.
Yeah.
So you're right. It would be very easy to know, who's goofing off and who's, going to work and actually, has essential business. So it's not like it would be a hard task, Chris. It would not. It actually would be easy to do something like this. But again, why it hasn't been done, I have we don't have any idea. I mean, it's pretty easy stuff that would really help minimize not just our exposure, but the exposure to the citizens on both sides of the border.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's the immediate concern, of course, is your officers having to interact with people, but then they clear the border and they go off to wherever they're going off to. And if they're running a temperature, or they're carrying, if they're transmitting the disease, I mean, that has an exponential effect. And so, we're sitting here talking for a few minutes, and we right off the bat come up with two easy things to do. Number one,
Right.
taking temperatures. Number two, really crack down on the essential travel thing with an
Hmm.
eye towards the folks that are the daily or weekly travelers. And it can be at the discretion of the officers, or the discretion of the port of entry chief, who has an idea of what the traffic is. We really have to push the authority and the power down to the officers on the line to make these calls, uh, because they know the port better than a bureaucrat in Washington, D.C. does.
And you hit the nail on the head, Chris. I always say that, the agency should make it a point to talk to the officers, to get ideas from them, because we know better on strategies that would work and strategies that wouldn't work. And you're right, than a bureaucrat in Washington, D.C. that's never worked the Southwest border. I mean, the border down here is a completely different animal than the border in the northern border. And here it's nonstop. And I think that by cracking down too, I think we'd be cracking down to a lot of these drug smugglers, because now with not so much traffic coming in, we're certainly able to maybe inspect 100% all the time, because the traffic would go down. But I have to say, Chris, that I commend my peers so much, because even with, like I told you earlier, even with this COVID, even with feeling that the agency hasn't done all that it can in order to help us, I mean, officers are still showing up every day, and drug seizures, if anything, have been up. Just 2 weeks ago, Nogales and on the cargo side got a huge meth load, that was embedded on the floor of the trailer. It was certainly not an easy find, and but it was accomplished. So they're still doing their job, and we just wish that the secretary and the acting commissioner would do their job in helping us to minimize exposure.
Yeah, and folks really need to calculate that when there's a huge meth seizure like that, I mean, what that really translates to, if you think about the impact on American lives, how many dead Americans does that seizure of drugs equate to, right? How many
Exactly.
overdoses, how many crimes against both persons and property? It's the numbers are always interesting and staggering, because it's a huge amount of money or a huge amount of weight that's being moved. But on the other end of that, if it had gotten through, that equals destroyed lives, destroyed property, destroyed families. And so, when your officers are able to do a tremendous job and interdict that kind of stuff, I mean, we need to pause and, thank the officers, say a prayer of thanksgiving, because that is lives and families that have not been destroyed by that interdiction. I know it's not perfect. I know it's not, a panacea, but that kind of a seizure is tremendous. And the fact that your officers are doing that, even with this crazy pandemic world that we're in, our thanks go to them.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you. And you're right. We always measure it by the the value of it. And you're right. I mean, what is priceless here is the lives that potentially were saved, and the families that were saved. And you're absolutely right. That is the most important reason why we're doing this is to save lives. So the least affected, U.S. citizens or residents that are affected by this also pandemic of all these drugs coming into our country is the reason why we do it.
So, Patricia, listen, I want to thank you very much for your time. Is there any last thing that you want to make sure you want to get in so that our viewers get the latest, the best information on what your officers are facing? Any closing comment?
Yes, Chris. I would really encourage your subscribers to get out and vote on November. It is so important that they vote. I can tell you that a lot of us are very worried about the potential outcome of this election because if it does go to someone like Joe Biden, I don't think that drugs are going to be a priority in our job. I think it's going to be the floodgates are going to be open, and we're all going to be processing people to be coming into our country, and that can't happen, because we got to get tighter on immigration, Chris. We still have to get tighter. And I think that the president has been doing a pretty good job. I think that more can be done, but it's so important that we don't allow people that want to sell our country out you know um, to potentially vote them in, because it'll be scary what happens to our country. And a lot of officers have even told me and stated that they don't think that they could work under a leadership that's going to allow everyone that's coming to the border in. So I urge everyone to please get out and vote. Super important for our country.
Thank you, Patricia. Great message, great information, stuff that our supporters need to hear. They need to get the facts straight from the officers involved and not filtered by a bunch of double talking bureaucrats. So your message is important, and we appreciate your time very much. Thank you, Patricia Kramer.
Thank you,
I'm
Chris.
Chris.
Thank you for having me.
I'm Chris Farrell on Watch.